Hello.
Hello.
Hey everyone. We'll give everybody another minute to get in. All right, Vidya, thank you so much for being here with us today. We really appreciate it. Since we're recording, I had a couple of things that I wanted to quickly cover before we get started. So welcome back. This is, I think, the fourth workshop in the V2 series leading up to the V2 pitch competition on April the 20th, 2022. And what I wanted to share first is as we make the run up to the conference or to the main event, to the finale, we are looking to have all the applications in the platform called Gust. So all of you should have access to that now. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen for a minute to show you kind of what that should look like. So if you have filled out the intent form, that is not the same thing as the application. It's different. So if you click on the link, let me go back one. You should see a page like this. So the link that you go to, I'll actually put it in the chat too. Just in case you don't have it, this is the link to the application, and you're going to push this button, apply for funding. And then I've got a couple of test companies set up there. And if I click the next link, it's going to give me the set of instructions. And when I go to next, then I get a page like this. So each of these is a link to a section that you need to complete, and your application isn't complete. We can't even see it until every one of these items has a circle with a green circle with a white checkbox. All right, so I want to know if anybody's having any trouble with this. It looks like a lot, but sincerely, like in this whole executive summary section, it's, we're just asking for you to, it's basically a paragraph for each of those, which gives you the equivalent of an executive summary. And then we had some questions about this in the office hours earlier this week. So under current funding round, there's a set of pull downs there. And we are looking probably at, you're either at a stage where as you're thinking about a company, it's going to be your own money, your friends and family money, or for this contest, this is sort of like your early seed money, right? So if we're thinking about that, you're going to pick one of these three things because this is a required field, and I wanted to go over it since a lot of the businesses that are applying for V2 are actually sort of at the ideation stage. We want to make sure that you click the right thing. So any of those first three would be fine for that one. And then again, if I go to current funding round, you'll put in the amount of money that you're looking for. And then this last one is, you can put any amount that you want there. This last piece is the security type. So security type means, what's the financial instrument that we're going to use to be able to make an investment in your company, if that's what we were doing, right? So this is a live platform for real companies listing investors from real accredited angel investors. And that's the way it's used. So this is an important thing for them to know. So if you have a business, you're applying for a business that already has sales and you've established a valuation, then you're a lot further along than I expect. And if you want to do preferred or common equity, that's fine. Otherwise, if you're pre-revenue or you're just starting out or you have just a tiny bit of revenue, we want you to click the convertible note. So those are the options. So just so that you know on that one, under the current funding round. Does anybody have any questions about that? All right. We've got a couple more office hours scheduled, one for next Tuesday, and again, Friday, the 25th. So feel free to join for those if you have any problems on filling out the application, and we're looking forward to reviewing those starting on the 25th. So with that, I would like to introduce Vidya Dinamani. I work at it and I practice, and it still does not roll off my tongue. I'm going to keep working at it. Vidya is joining us today. She's one of the best speakers I know, and she knows this space in ways that are just exceptional. So really super glad to have Vidya here to talk with us today. We'll hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Misty. And that was a high bar you set there, my friend. I want to know, I just want to check in about how much time. I saw Stacey come on. So hi, Stacey. I just want to check, like, how long do you want me to talk for, Misty? And are we splitting the time just so that I can keep an eye on what I'm talking about and I can flex longer or shorter based on how long?
Yeah, so I don't think anyone will complain if we finish early. So there's, that's totally fine. You're the only speaker for today, okay, and we've got the time until 1:45. So we probably have 5 minutes or so of wrap-up comments. We need to do it at the end, but as long as you're done by 1:40, that's perfect. And if it's shorter than that, that's perfectly fine too.
Okay, awesome. And so I've got I just want to take you through the customer product. And I saw that when Misty put up the application, one of the first things in your executive summary was about the customer problem. And it's one of those areas where most people don't get it right. And that's not early startups, that's established businesses. So I want to take you through a way to think about the customer problem and give you a chance to kind of look at it through a lens of some different examples and different products. And then I'm happy to answer any questions and kind of deep dive into your area, and happy to also listen to how you're describing the problem. So I know this is a talk, but I love it when we have some interaction. So let me talk for maybe sort of 30 minutes or so, and then we can just open it up to a conversation. Okay, so with that, I'm going to share my screen. And let's go ahead and get started. And I will try and also keep an eye on the chat, but this is a small group. So please, if you've got a question in between, just either flag, I'm watching the video, but just chat or flag, put your little hand up and I will keep an eye on it. Okay, so what I want to talk to you about is this idea of customer discovery, really focusing and having clarity around the problem that you're solving for a customer and how that leads to a product market fit. So just a tiny bit about me. I've been in most of my career has been in executive leadership for product management at various companies, both smaller and very, very large. I started my company for product coaching about 6 years ago. And we've worked with over 200 companies from small up to Fortune 50. So the stuff that I'm talking about universally applies to whatever product, whatever service across multiple different industries, whether you're a consumer product, whether you're a physical, hardware, life science. Trust me, we've touched them all. I'm also an investor and work with a company. I'm a partner at Astra Ventures. And we have about 20 companies in our portfolio. We primarily focus on female founders, and that's through the venture arm. And we focus on both helping female founders understand how to succeed when some of the odds are stacked pretty heavily against women entrepreneurs. And then from a personal investment perspective, invest in seed stage companies. I'm going to tell you about this at the end, but if you like what you're hearing, We wrote a book, my business partner and myself, and it's on Amazon. So if you want to learn more and get more deep into some of these areas, especially if you think about this is what I love to do, I'm going to build products for the rest of my life, it might be worthwhile picking it up. Okay, so let's get started. And I want to begin with the kind of customer feedback that we all want as CEOs, as founders, as product leaders. And for you all, it's synonymous. You know, it's a small team. You are the person making those product calls. So the kinds of things that we really want to hear, and this is real feedback taken off various reviews. So thank you for making this so simple. I'll never have a home without one. Oh, that's great testimonial, right? And this has been a lifesaver. So let me tell you the products behind those amazing customer testimonials. The first is this little camera, and it's Wise. And that's where making it so simple. So this is a security camera, and it's just grown enormously. This was a startup about 5-6 years ago, and people are buying them literally in groups of 3, 4, 5, 6, because they're $20 and they're incredibly effective. This company has enjoyed double year-over-year growth since it launched. The second one is this idea of I'll never have a home without one. And so I'm going to talk to you, and I'm going to give you more about these companies. I'm just introducing them, and then we'll talk a little bit more about why. Why are they so successful? How do they nail that customer and product market fit? The second is this company called Ecobee, and you can see it's a thermostat. And again, when you hear the word love coming out of your customer's mouth in a review, you know that you've struck gold. And then the first two were consumer products. The last one is software, and it's a company called Gusto, and it does payroll and HR software, primarily for small businesses. And take a look here. And I feel always a little bit funny sort of giving this example. I worked at Intuit for 10 years. We do payroll software. We do lots of accounting software. But listen to this. It's the best online payroll provider I have ever seen. And again, there's that word love. I love the ease. This is what you want your customers to say. And, you know, sometimes when we start this and I talk about, like, look at all these amazing testimonials, and it immediately puts you in the space of this, look how easy it is. And, you know, kind of getting to that love is really, really tough, but there is a path towards it. And if you follow that path, you'll get it right. The biggest companies fail at this as well. So this idea that, you know, this moving to product market fit, it sounds like it's pretty straightforward. It sounds like the more successful the business, the easier it will be. But just take a look at a couple of these major failures, just so we know that the biggest companies in the world can get it wrong. So this is Google Glass. I remember buying one of these about maybe 7 years ago, and it was hyped, right? It was just going to be sort of this best product. The marketing was amazing. It was going to integrate. It was going to make all our lives simpler. And it was sort of an epic failure, a ton of money, a ton of resources, a ton of people, but the product didn't actually meet anyone's needs. Need I say more, right? I mean, I think, you know, probably many of you are too young to remember this, but Coke failed epically about, I think, gosh, this is now a long time ago, decades ago. But they got like 40,000 people calling them to tell them sort of how devastated they were. Literally, there were people calling them, and it sounded like there was a death in the family because of new Coke, right? So Coke got it wrong. And then the last example, because I got to pick on Facebook, right? We all got to pick on Facebook. They put out this product called Facebook Home. Probably never heard of this because it disappeared as quickly as it came up. It was only for Android, and it was supposed to replace the entire experience on your phone, and replace sort of the apps and so forth into this Facebook image. Needless to say, people just ran away screaming, and Facebook shut it down. So how do you do it then, right? How do you go about building products that customers get to that love? They want, they love, they buy. So that's what I want to talk to you about today. I want to talk to you about sort of how to unlock that key to building better products. And especially as you're in early stages, this is critical. Being able to identify the exact problem, because you've probably got a great idea. So how do you make it fit to the customer who needs it? How do you get to product market fit? And then I'll just really, really briefly touch upon some customer discovery and some competition, but I'm primarily going to focus on product market fit. I want you to be able to tell the story to whoever listens, to your investors, to people that you pitch for. I want you to win these pitches. And the way that you get to that is by understanding your customer. Okay, so let's bring back these 3 companies that I introduced with those great testimonials, right? It was the camera, it was the thermostat, and it was the payroll software. The one thing, I'll go back to these, the one thing that all 3 of them had in common is that incredible testimonial. They also measured, they put a metric, a North Star metric in place that measured how often customers would recommend their product to others. A lot of companies use this as a growth metric, but when you get to a point where you voluntarily tell people and think about those things that you recommend to your friends, right? Either you love the product and you want everybody to know, or you have a terrible experience and you want everybody to know. So these 3 products had incredible word of mouth, right? And it's because people loved their experience and they wanted to share it. The things that they had in common is they were very, very clear on the customer problem that they were solving. When you think about things like payroll and thermostats and cameras, there's a lot of different features that go into all of these, but they started, and this is really important, they started, and this is why we like bringing products that have only been around for a few years, because they got crystal clear on the problem that they wanted to solve. So for Ecobee, the thermostat, lots and lots of I'm going to tell you more about this one as well, but they narrowed the problem they were going to focus on with this idea that in the same room that's been controlled by a thermostat that's usually not in that room, it's usually in the hallway, there are hot zones and cold zones. And what they wanted to do was they wanted to fix that. They wanted the temperature that you chose to be the one that was in the room. And there weren't these like weird sort of temperature kind of like variations. That's that one problem that they focused on. The second area that all 3 had in common was that they knew their customer inside and out. Now, a lot of the time, what I'll see in pitches and what I'll hear from founders is demographics. I'll hear that it's women from 20 to 40. And then anytime I hear a demographic, and I can tell you this is often true of most investors, what we hear is that you really don't understand your customer. So don't use demographics. What you want to do is to get into what we call psychographics. You want to understand what they really care about. What are they trying to solve? What are they trying to improve in their lives? Now for Gusto, they focused on payroll for really small businesses, just for mom and pop shops. So this isn't going after medium businesses, big businesses. This is a tiny, tiny place with maybe a couple of employees. Now, what they understood was that they had no time for payroll. They just wanted it to be done really simply, but also they really cared about the employees. These are kind of like family places. They connect the 1, 2, 3 people that work there. They want to treat really well. They want to keep them. So one of the features that Gusto put in to their product was this ability to write a thank you note with every paycheck. Now, for those of us who's worked in big companies, I mean, that's unheard of. No, you don't get a thank you note with every paycheck. But what Gusto knew was that connection, the ability to say thank you while you're being paid, made a difference. That alone was an incredible delighter to the customers of Gusto. And that's one of the reasons why they grew so quickly, because mom and pop shops told everybody, and it changed retention. It changed the feel of it. It was sort of everything about paying someone became personal. The last thing, and this is a bit more complicated, and I'm not going to go into depth here, but I want to sort of share with you how this all connects together. When you think about, you have a lot of different customers, I'm going to ask you to narrow down really specifically to one type today. But I know that you need to build a vision for how you're going to serve many different customers. this path to product market fit and success is that you tie a specific person to a specific problem, to a specific need. And when you have that lined up, then you set your product features around that sort of triangle. You then repeat it for the next type of customer, the next type of problem, and then connect it to those needs. Here's the example with Wise, with the camera. When they launched, they were competing against some pretty big systems like Nest, right? Some complicated, very sophisticated systems. They decided that the first customer they were going to go after was the super geek, the super DIY. I'm going to get up, I know how to put my camera on, and I want to know all the data. So what they did with their first dashboard is, this is like way too complicated for someone like me, but the kind of customer they went to, they understood that being able to kind of keep an eye on everything, especially at that price point, to have the insight into all the numbers, the data, was really important. So the very first release they had, they built this dashboard, and it looked very different from any other system out there. Instead of one video feed, you've got 10. Instead of like one set of pieces of data, you've got a dashboard. They've really understood that customer need. So I wanted to set that framework first of saying, this is why, this is how you get to think about that triangle of clarify the specific problem, understand the needs of a specific customer, is how you get to product market fit. So let's go into each of these a bit more specifically, okay? So I want to talk about product first, problem first, and then I want to talk about the person. And the way that we talk about this is from our book. We call it, it sounds a little technical, but this will all make sense, hopefully. The first piece is coming into defining the problem. So a lot of us think in solutions, it's natural, right? We talk in features, we talk in like, here's what it's going to look like. We don't really talk in the language of problems, because we want to talk about what it is that we're going to build, what's the money going towards. And what that means is that your entire team will end up thinking feature, 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 feature. The problem with that is that if we're not all on the same page with the specific problem, if you haven't defined it, and you need to as a leader of your company, if you don't do that clearly, what happens is there's a ton of confusion. I remember a similar workshop like this, and this is about 6 years ago now, and it was a very early stage. We had a group of maybe 30 different founders, and there were several co-founders in the group, and we made them all write, what problem are you solving? Now, it sounds pretty simple, right? But we had everybody write it, and then they shared. These two co-founders actually wrote completely different problems. They'd been working together for like 12 months, but they had different visions, and they'd never actually stopped to say, this is the problem. Instead, they kept fighting about what features they were going to build. And we see that over and over again in really big companies as well. Whenever we see there is an argument, an issue with like which priority, what are we going to do first, how are we going to kind of like work, when the engineering team or the development team is confused, it's usually because we haven't defined the problem. So we know that there's a lot of different problems that you can solve. Customers never have one single problem, they have lots. So it's important for you to be able to talk about, this is what I explored. And from a technical perspective, this is called divergent thinking. We want to think broadly, we want to explore the space, and then we want to pick, right? We want to say, with all of these choices, this is the one. Usually the way that you pick is the one that customers will pay for, right? And that is an important part of the value proposition and an important part of the story as you tell your investor, as you tell the group that you're pitching to, as you write your executive summary. Why did you pick this? Why is it so important? How do you know that the customer needs this particular problem solved? And how is that a path to revenue? So we call this a convergent problem statement, because you've explored and then you've specifically picked the problem that you're going to go after. The definition is specifically says it expresses the difficulty your customer is dealing with no attempt to address possible solutions. So that, if I simplify this, all it means is that your problem for your customer has got to exist without your product ever showing up. So even if I never had the Ecobee, I never had the Wise camera, I still have the problem and I'm looking for a solution. So I want to bring this to life, and I'm going to bring back Ecobee. Now, this is a thermostat. It looks a lot like the one that I have on my wall. I haven't upgraded mine yet. I really should. But you can see there's a bunch of buttons, there's a bunch of numbers. I don't know what half these things do. I just know that I go in manually and I set the temperature, and then I go back and there's a couple of things that I remember, but for the most part, I don't have any idea how this thing works. So let's pretend we're all a team and we're like, okay, we're going to build a better home thermostat. Clearly, the good folks at Ecobee had this idea. Now, normally this is what happens. Normally, what happens is we start talking about, like, what do we want to do? So we're going to say, this is our team. There's a lot of home temperature systems out there, but they're not that easy to use. You know, I think we should have like really simple, bold numbers, right? Like just make it sort of super high tech, super modern. And then what we want to be able to do is like, let's bring IoT into it. Everything should be connected and being able to maintain and run with their smartphones. Now, what we just did is we talked about feature, 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 right? Here's what we're going to build. Not once do we really talk about problems. And unfortunately, a company not Ecobee did that. They built this. This is actually a product that you can buy. It has, you can see it looks elegant. It's got simple, bold numbers. It's IoT enabled. But you know what? Here's the reviews that the customers got. These are not the testimonials you want. This thing almost resets itself. This thing has ended up costing me money. There's nothing worse than waking up in the middle of the night in a sweat. So while the product looked beautiful and it was easy to read and it was connected to your phone, it didn't solve any problem. It didn't solve the fundamental problem. Now, it's because all they did was talk about features, right? And this is what we see over and over again. And often teams will just be like, okay, we're going to add this next feature and we'll do this thing next and we'll build this thing next. You can't. You've got to go back and you've got to really narrow in on the problem. So if we did that, right, if we actually thought about like, what are people experiencing? We got to go watch. We've got to talk to customers. We can't assume that just because I've got a crappy thermostat in my hallway, it doesn't mean that that's what customers are trying to solve. Because if I did that and I just said I wanted to look better, I build a product like the one you just saw. Instead, I want to go and actually say, like, how are people using their thermostats? What do they care about? What's going on? If you do that, then you find out things like this. Oh, I'm spending way too much money, right, on my thermostat. It's like I'm constantly heating and cooling my home. I hate it when I came out of the box and all the defaults, it resets itself and they don't work for me. Like, shouldn't like the temperature just match the weather and so on and so on? We get lots and lots of problems. People aren't telling us what to build. They're telling us what they're experiencing. Now, what happens is you've got to choose. You've got to pick the specific problem that you want to go after. Now, in this case, Ecobee said, I want to fix the fact that the temperature just isn't right in my house. That's the key problem. That's the fundamental one. That's what I'm going to go after. And so they, instead of focusing on features, they start looking at focusing on the problem. And here's the problem definition that we made up for them. Homeowners have multiple cold and hot zones in their house. They find it annoying and confusing figuring out how to set temperatures and zones automatically. So they're constantly changing the temperature manually. That's what we want to fix. Now, what you can see here as you break this down is that it's a very specific problem. We bring to life the emotion, because usually when there's a problem, there's a need that's tied into its frustration, annoyance. There's something, or I want to save time. This is taking me too long. I want it to be more efficient. This is costing me too much. There's an underlying emotional need behind it. And you have to understand why, right? Like why is this problem happening for them? There's no solutions in here. We're not talking about features. We're not talking about what we're going to build. We're just defining a specific problem. Now, when you do that, you build something like this. So instead of just the beautiful, elegant, they made it look great, right? And it's IoT enabled. They built those features in. But what they did was they created these tiny little, these little micro stations, and they get placed around the house. And when you do that, it triangulates all the temperatures. And so the zones are now controlled because you understand what the temperatures are in different places. So you're no longer going into it's freezing in the bedroom and it's boiling down in the kitchen. It regulates those specific things. And now you get testimonials that look like this. It's like my EKB reads the temperature in the living room where I sit, and it ignores where the actual thermostat is sitting. They're not related to each other. What they fixed and why this product is working so well and growing so fast is they fixed a fundamental problem that they knew a lot of customers had. Now they've added features since then. There's more things that it can do, but that's where they started. It's that clarity around understanding the problem and not just the single problem, but understanding the broad range of problems and then deliberately picking the one that they believe that customers would pay for. Okay, so that was the first part. Okay, I'm going to keep going. So the next piece is around the person, right? So how do you bring that customer to life? How do you move away from just this idea of demographics to something that's real? Now, a lot of the time we will go into offices. We've gone into businesses that I'm telling you are billion-dollar businesses, and we see personas that kind of look like this. You've got this shiny face, this happy person, and you've got a bunch of stuff about him, right? So let's take a look. He's been in industry for a long time, 33 years. Some of these things, I mean, this is real. I'm not entirely sure like why that matters in terms of male-female ratio. You've got his age. Remember what I said about demographics. And then you've got this statement. I focus on what will drive improvements and profits in my company. So I want to ask you, which CEO would say that's not important to them? So this entire thing is kind of meaningless. You really don't know Brent at all. It just could be absolutely anybody. So this is an example of making everybody just feel the same, like every CEO out there thinks the same way. Well, you know what? If you are going after the CEO of a certain type of company in a specific industry, you betcha they're going to worry about very specific things, not this generic, I just want to be profitable. So what I want to do is to talk to you about how you get into that mindset. How do you understand? And a persona for us, the definition, the formal definition, it's a living archetype of your primary target customer and representing similar behaviors and characteristics. So you can use this information in your day-to-day product decisions, because the way that you want to think about it is, what does Brent care about? Like, what would Brent want out of this? You want to have that person literally being someone you talk about in your product decisions. So let me bring this one to life, and I'm going to use Gusto, the software company, the one that's payroll, as an example. So if we just focused on demographics, right? If we just said, okay, so our payroll manager, she's a woman, she's 34 to 50, I mean, demographic. Like, I don't know what I would do with this. I don't know how I would make a product decision or a feature decision based on this. It's kind of meaningless. So what I really want to do is to kind of get into that payroll manager, and I want to say, like, what does she really care about? Like, how is she making these decisions? Like, what does she do day to day? What is she worried about? I mean, that's always an amazing question to ask when you're talking to customers. What keeps you up at night? I go to that question over and over again. And then, like, what does she wish, right? So you start getting into that, like, gosh, I really wish that this piece would be simpler, or I wish I could connect the spreadsheet to this one. You start getting into sort of the aspirational, what does she want to see happen? When you do that, you start bringing this payroll person to life. Now, the first thing you'll see is the picture. This isn't just a smiley, shiny face, like beaming away. This is someone who's like, there's a bunch of paper around her. You can see she's like focused. You kind of get a sense of like, this is a serious person and she takes her job really seriously. And when you talk to her, like her name's Jennifer, remember it's an archetype, but it represents a number of conversations that we've had with payroll managers of small companies. Look at a couple of these statements, right? And these are all quotes. If it's not accurate, it doesn't go out. This is someone who takes things really seriously. I know what I'm doing. Just let me get started. Like, don't. And so now you're starting to be like, okay, I'm starting to think about the experience here. I'm not going to spend 10, 15 minutes onboarding her. This is the woman who wants the information. It needs to be fast. It needs to be obvious what I do next. So it's because we've understood what she cares about that you can start tying into, now, how do I build this? How do I design this? What do I do first? A lot of the time in B2B, for those of you who are thinking about going to businesses, you're going to have someone who uses your software or your product, and you're going to have someone who's actually making the decision to buy. And so it's really important for us to think about both, because we need to be able to address in marketing, in sales, in the way that we understood like what the needs are around these people. Like, what does her boss care about? Now, here's a small business owner. Here's Carol, and she's not even at a desk, right? She's a woman on the go. She's working in a car. You can see that she's literally sort of probably doing sales calls, moving from place to place. She's on the move. And here's what she cares about. I need to know the numbers. I need to be on the pulse. Really small business. I can't have reports monthly. This isn't a, give me the spreadsheet at the end of the month. This is I need my pulse on everything that's going on. She also feels like it stops with me. I need to approve everything. Now you're starting to see like how the payroll manager and what she uses and how we get her onboarded, very different to like the managerial view, the approval chain, what needs to be in place for a small business to make the decision to buy the software. When you get to know Jennifer and Carol, you're going to speak their language. You're going to be able to talk deeply and intimately about their needs. And for an investor, we're like, oh my gosh, they totally understood it. They've nailed this, right? They understand their customer really well. And I'm confident that they're going to make the right decisions going forward. Now, the reason I wanted to show you both of those, and I wanted to show you the pictures, is that these represent real people. And you really, from a team perspective, as you bring people on, they get to understand who they're building for as well, which makes them much better team members. Rather than just be like, let's focus on the feature and let's focus on the software, or let's focus on the component, the device. We're always thinking like, who is this for? Because they have real attitudes. They care about specific things. And the demographics are just like not that critical. As you're thinking about putting your TAMs together, as you're thinking about all the market, absolutely, that you've got to do all of that research. You've got to present the data. So you understand how many people are there like this, how many businesses, how much do they spend? All of that stuff is very important. So don't get me wrong from a financial perspective, from a market position perspective, but when you're building your actual product, don't build to demographics, build to what they care about. So you'll get to a place where you'll literally be thinking about Jennifer and Carol and making product trade-offs for them. All right, so the last couple of pieces, and then as I said, I want to kind of open this up for as I want to tell you about how you get there. Like, how do you actually think about making this learning, this connecting a habit? And I want all of you, as if you haven't already sort of brought your customer to life, or you haven't talked directly to a customer, is to do that. The best way to do this is to watch them. And for the last couple of years, you know, we're all on Zoom, and we've pivoted into being in person to doing things like virtual interviews. I mean, one of the things that you can do is I often say, could you just show me around your desk? And just get their phone and have them just walk you around the room where they work. What does it look like? If you're doing, and do that for whatever type of product. If you're working on a fitness app, ask to show, like, where are they working out? What does that place look like? Is it in the corner of their bedroom? Is it in the basement? Is it in the garage? Like, where? Think about some video surveys where you can ask them to literally tape. You can say, could you record certain pieces? I've done things like visual diaries, asking them to record certain moments in their day. So think about how they might use your product. What is your product? What's the problem you're solving? And then ask them to show you around and talk about that. So you can make a visual. I mean, it's not ideal that we're not in person, but it shouldn't stop you from doing direct observation. And I've often, especially if I ask them to share their desktop, not just the screen, but like, what else is up there? I remember kind of going into a client once, and I would never have seen this if I hadn't observed. They had a stack of Post-its, literally the stickies, not the virtual ones, the real ones. They had them posted on the side of their screen. So if I wanted to be able to see that, and it allowed me to say, well, what are you doing? And it was all these reminders. They literally had a step-by-step. Here's what I do from steps 1 to 7, because it wasn't obvious in their product, like what to do next. It didn't take them step by step. And that was a great sort of interesting moment. One more story here. I remember back when I was into it, working on tax, I remember hearing that people kept talking about, I've got my tax, I've got all my receipts, I'm ready to go. And I remember kind of going into someone's apartment, and they invited us in, and we were like, excited to see how they organized it, because she sounded like she was super organized. And she said, no, exactly, I've got all my receipts, everything that I need to do for this year. She goes, I'm not kidding, this is a true story. She goes to the sink in her kitchen and she pulls out a shoebox, and she has stuffed every stained receipt that she's got the last year into that shoebox. That was her idea of being organized, because she knew that every receipt was in that box somewhere. So we make a lot of assumptions. We make a lot of, we think my idea of organization is it's a file cabinet. It's everything sort of neatly lined up and dated. Hers was, I've got everything and I know exactly where it is. So you've got to kind of get into like watching. It's really fun to watch your customers as well. The next thing to do is to empathize. Like, you got to put yourself in their shoes. So, when you think about a survey, when you think about focus groups, you don't tend to get to the emotion. And so you've got to build in the time. So when you're thinking about interviewing, like, build some rapport, right? And then empathize with the problem that they're having. Let them vent or talk about sort of like what the impact is. You kind of want to get to a place where you truly understand and you feel their pain. That allows you to share that empathy and that understanding with anyone you pitch for. It changes the tone of how you will talk about your customer when you actually understand and empathize with the problems that they're having. And the last one here, or maybe there's a couple more, is this idea about, I talked about individualizing needs. There's an entire pillar around this that I didn't go into, but the idea here is everyone has a set of needs that are very different. So if we talk about security, for example, some of the folks that you see here might be living in apartments. They don't own the place, but maybe they have night jobs, and it's really important for them to feel like secure and safe when they're coming home. Others might have families, and they might be on the road a lot. They might be back to traveling after a long time of not. And now they're suddenly concerned about like making sure that they can actually keep an eye on everything. So the product itself, the camera, could absolutely work for every single one of these people, but we've got to start somewhere. We've got to use our marketing dollars really effectively. So being able to say, is it the individual who's in an apartment and worried about coming home late? Do we start there? And what kind of features would we need, right? Would we need certain types of lights? Are they going to install it themselves? Are they going to get someone to install it for them? Who are we going to package this for? Because it completely changes the way that we set up the features. Are they going to buy multiple devices immediately, or are they going to buy one and we want to start with one and then grow? Or is it really sort of packages because this is a homeowner and so they want to have sort of multiple entrances covered? All of these decisions go into what am I going to do first? As an investor, that's what we want to know. Do we want you to address the entire market of every single one person in the world that wants a security camera? Absolutely. That's how you're going to grow big, but you got to start somewhere. And if you don't know that, what ends up happening is that you might kind of do some of the fun, sexy features. You might end up building something that sort of fits multiple people's needs, but they don't beautifully solve a single person's needs. And when it sort of solves sort of needs across multiple different people, then most of us as consumers tend to be quite careful and tend to go, that feels like it's not quite for me, and you move on. What you want to do is to build your product in such a way that says that's exactly what I'm looking for. Whether that's software, whether that's tech, whether it's devices, whether you're in life science, whatever you're doing, think about who you're going to start with first, and then tell us, and then here's my next set of customers. I'm going to start with the single woman who cares about security, and then I'm going to move to homeowners, and especially I'm going to focus on those who are traveling. I'm going to all do it DIY first, so these people are going to be very savvy. And then I'm going to be able to put services on top of that. So now I'm going to have a network of people that can help install, and I'm going to have partnerships. You're showing the progression of your product. You're showing how you've carefully thought about it and how you're going to use funds effectively. That's the reason that you want to actually individualize all of these people's needs. Once you've done that, this idea of prioritization and separating them out allows you to talk about like what's important in what sequence. Then you can have a conversation. As an investor, I might say, gosh, if I doubled my investment, because I really think the traveler, the home, because they're going to buy 3 devices. And so I would rather you switch there first. And that way we can kind of, I've got a connection to Home Depot, I've got this. Then you can be like, okay, great. Instead of, again, munging it together, instead of starting with the single person, you're going to start with the family. You're going to start with the homeowner. That's fine. What you've done is you've adjusted based on connections, network. It's a great prioritization conversation with your investor versus it being like, I'll just do everything. And often that's what we hear. Oh, I'll do that too. I'll add this on. You want that feature? It becomes bloated. There's no way that you can execute this on time, and it becomes very, very complicated. So what we want to hear is how you're thoughtfully making decisions and why you're prioritizing the way that you are. Okay, last thing, learning from competition. Okay, so we want you clearly to think about competition. I know you're at early stages. So what I want you to focus on, and this is the simplest things for early stage companies, is to understand, look at your competition and take a look at what people love about them. And you can do this through testimonials. You can read reviews. You can talk to their customers that are using their products. And that's not, that's completely free to do. And it's actually, I encourage you to do this. If you've got something that you're going into the competitive space, go find people who are using the competitive product and find out what they love, and then find out what's a problem. If you can figure out that there's a common set of issues, and that's the reason why your product is going to solve unmet needs. It's going to solve pain because your competitor is already not doing that. And that's a great place to come in. And it's a great place from you from competition. I mean, all of you will have your standard competition and talk features. If you can talk to me about why this is so important to come in now and how you're differentiated and how you've talked to the competition, the customers of the competition, and you know that they're just waiting to switch because of this need, that's incredibly compelling. So that's a simple way to very quickly learn. And as you get more sophisticated, you'll do more market research, etc. But right now, kind of going to just your competition's reviews is really helpful in helping you, again, make the argument about why your product is so important to introduce now. So product market fit. So we talked about it's like pulling together. You're going to learn from your prospects, your potential customers, learn from the people that you're bringing to life, who are the users of your product or the buyers of your product. Add that with the competition, and think through sort of like where those opportunities are and where they connect. And then focus, pick a specific problem. Build out your roadmap, build out the vision to be bigger, but start very specifically and be able to articulate the problem in such a way that you understand exactly who the person is and why they care. And as I said, I didn't really go into individualized needs, but if there's multiple different people, different segments, different markets, put them in priority order and talk about why you're prioritizing that way. And that's a rinse and repeat, no matter how big you get. Fortune 50 companies, we're working with an international company right now who've got product people all around the world, literally around the world, and hundreds. And this is exactly what we teach them to do as well. It's true with your in discovery for a completely new product as an entrepreneur, and you've got a lot more control of this. This gets more complicated as you get bigger, but the fundamentals just don't change. As I said, if you like this and you want to learn more, feel free to grab the book and you can sort of see a bit more information. There's also a bunch of templates, which is why I also wanted to show you this slide. If you go to productgroundwork.com, the persona, the template for problem statement to help you step by step articulate the problem, they're all there. So you can go ahead and just free download to all those templates. Okay, so with that, I am going to stop sharing and I want to hear from you.
I have a quick question, actually.
Go ahead, Kylie.
Yeah, so first of all, I wanted to say thank you so much for your presentation. I learned so much from it. And actually, you were one of the first people that I've heard talk about portraying not your demographic, but actually what your audience cares about. So I'll be sure to include that in my next pitch.
Good.
But I'm curious, can we adopt multiple personas or target audiences right off the bat, or would you recommend just going with one? Like, for example, if we had the variable of income or something, and you had a target audience that had many different income levels, is that going to be a problem, or should I really just have like one specific type of person?
Give me a quick, I want to start, I'll answer that in a second, but just give me a little bit more about like, what's your product? Just give me like 1 or 2 sentences about what you're doing.
Yeah, so we're designing a new cooling system, and it's going to use thermoacoustic technology to cool homes. And it's going to be at lower cost for the customer and easier to maintain because it's fewer parts, and it's much more sustainable than the typical AC system. Okay.
So what I would say for you is like, and the reason I wanted to know is that income matter. So if you tell me that income's not the variable that you care about, it's really a set of different types of variables for the need.
Okay.
It happens to cross different income levels, then I'm like, that's okay. So that's why demographics can really screw you up, because you tend to think this income and this, but really it's more of an attitude. If someone deeply cares, I mean, and if it's environmental, you can have people who are at lower income levels or to very high that might be like deeply concerned about environmental issues and want to care about a better system to bring in a more effective cooling system. Or it might be that, you know, is it someone who's building a new home? Is it someone who is wanting to, who really concerned about costs, right? And expenses.
Yeah.
So that you can have different income levels all care, but it's that psychographic need, like what is solving, and then bring that person to life. Then from a marketing perspective, you'll tell me, well, the best people to market to are this group, and then we can pick up this demographic and this income level and so forth, because you're going after those people first. But I don't know the income, it might be, but I would question whether you think income is a really important variable for you to focus on.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much. And then I actually have one other. And in our last pitch competition, my group was struggling with the question, why has this never been done before? And we didn't know how to answer that like at all. We just pretty much said, you know, we're going into the market as a disruptor. I don't know if you have any other advice than just repeating that at the next competition, but.
Well, you know, whenever you kind of like hear it's like an invention and you are disrupting, I would talk about like what your unique capabilities and unique perspective allowed you to see this problem differently, right?
Okay.
And so if there truly is nothing else like it in the market, then you've got to say, this is what I see, and this is the reason why we got to see it this way, because we've never put like someone who's got industrial experience with this, with that, and we were like, oh my gosh, there's a problem here that we can solve very, very differently, and get super excited about the breakthrough. And it's an opportunity for you to emphasize your team and your unique skills and build up your credibility to say, yeah, you're right. No one has thought about it this way before, because we brought this unique group together to think about it that way.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. Really.
Yeah. That's it. Good luck.
Yeah, thank you.
Are there any others?
Yes. Hi, my name's Jolene Mann, not Luke. That's my team member. Thank you so much for your presentation. So I have a question about how we incorporate, you were saying, like learning from our competitors. So that's a big part of like our product as well, the competitor space. And for that slide specifically too on our pitch deck, how best do you think we can make that slide and the product slide so that they are both complementary?
Tell me quickly about your product.
It's an online marketplace for shoppers and sellers to buy purpose-driven brands. So like Etsy, but for brands that are sustainable or give back to different causes.
Okay, cool. So one of the things that you could take a look at is like, where do you kind of go? You can talk about the group places that you go deliberately to buy sort of purpose brands, and you can line them up and you can go, I have to individually, what I'm hearing is I have to individually go to these different places, right, in order to be able to make choices. Or alternatively, I go to a marketplace, but they're not all necessarily consistent with being a purpose-driven brand. So you've got sort of this like two-set competitor market where you're talking about, I can do this individually, and these are sort of the individual places. So this isn't really a competition. Or I can go to these marketplaces and I'm not able to discern which ones are purpose-driven and not. So this is not the competition. So if you are unique, that's the way that I would set it up, saying these are the two types of areas that we are, that you could think of as competition, but really there's nothing that brings it together. So there's a unique place. Is that true? Or are there other places that do this with you?
So there were other marketplaces that focus on specific, like just sustainability or just artisan, but nothing that's like poverty, religious, social justice, sustainably all together in one platform. And
so that's, I mean, I would literally build your, don't do the check marks and things, because anytime for any of you, what you want to do from a competitive slide is you want to highlight your uniqueness. And so a lot of the time when you just have sort of the check marks, that's better for features. it doesn't really sort of articulate the difference. So for you, Jolene, I'd probably put like the very different, like I'd be like, here's sort of the artisans, here's the social justice, here's this type of place. But you're sort of in the middle saying uniquely, there's nothing else like you. And so just visually, you're showing the differentiation because, and if there's overlaps, you can do it through, okay, this particular competitor does these two things, this competitor does this one thing. But I almost think of it as like a Venn diagram or a multi-Venn diagram versus a standard competitor slide. So play with that.
Okay, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you guys are.
Okay, other questions?
Okay, I think that was it, Misty.
Well, it's so good to have you here, and we're recording the session, so we'll be able to share it. I know that we often are we're competing on campus this spring for other contests that are going on, and this is the time that's set aside for student groups, but we end up with a lot of things competing for the space. So we know that students are picking up the recordings later. I take a look at those later. So thank you so much. I can't tell you how grateful we are to have you here with us again this year. And
You're so welcome.
I always learn stuff from you every time. Okay. It's very great.
That's fun, and good luck to everybody.
Thank you so much. For everyone else on the call, are there like, I've added the office hours, and anybody who'd filled out the interest form, I've added to the calendar invite for the office hours. So hopefully we've added another one for tomorrow to help with anybody who's working on those applications. So I can't say enough. Start working on those applications or keep working on those applications. That deadline will be here on the 25th. We do not have any room in the schedule for late entries. So at the same time that you are submitting your application, we are giving your applications to the reviewers that will do the first round of judging that starts on the 25th and wraps up on the 29th. We don't have any extra room in there. So don't delay, get it done early. I expect it to take twice as long as you think it will, because this is a different kind of application than we've done before. Any other questions about V2 or any of the process?
Yes. Is there going to be a financial modeling workshop or something in the regards?
Yeah, we did a financial modeling workshop already. So
I see. Is there a recording maybe?
Yeah, so if you got the email that went out yesterday, there was a link to the recording there. So, and if you, Jolene, if you don't have that, I'm happy to resend it.
Okay, I'll look. Thank you.
Yeah, just let me know if you don't have it. All right, so you get a little bit of extra time back. Everybody enjoy the rest of your day and the lovely weather that we're having right now. And we will see you soon. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.